All right, being 6:04, I'd like to call the Charter Review Committee May 21st to order. And at this time, for the agenda, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. You can join me.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, I'll turn it back to our Executive Secretary.
Hey, everyone. So we are here tonight. The first part of the business will be to reorganize. So our chairman is now, as we know, our select board member. And we had one resignation by Robert Zuccaroli, which we are down 2 members. But as the chair told us last week, we have 2 alternates that will automatically become full voting members. And so there was no need to reconvene the special appointment committee. So we do have 9 members. And we're gonna open the nominations. I don't know, I didn't get any when they told me that they were going to be absent tonight. So right now, we're gonna take nominations for.
Nominate Larry Kaiser.
For what?
For
We're gonna do chair first.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
fine. Now with the chair.
Okay, so it's a motion for,
We've already done the clerk.
Larry, you gonna accept that nomination? Okay, we have any more nominations?
I nominate Alan Costello.
Alan, are you going to accept that
I'll
nomination?
accept that nomination. Thank you.
Any other nominations? Okay, so we have, everyone gets 1 vote. We have 2 parties running, Larry Pizer and Alan Costello. Steve, how do you vote?
I vote for Alan.
Alan Costello. Alan, how do you vote?
I'm gonna vote for myself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe, how do you vote?
I vote for Larry.
Mike is not here. Tim is not here.
I'm here.
Yep, we haven't gotten to you, Martha, yet. Len,
Oh,
how
I'm
do you
sorry.
vote? It's okay. Len,
I vote for Al.
you vote for Al. Larry, how do you vote?
For Larry.
Larry. Martha, how do you vote? We
I
have
vote for
Ellen.
Larry. I'll vote
Larry,
for Larry.
and Eddie's not here.
I'm here.
Okay, we have a tie. We have 3 votes each.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
No, that's Betty. Yeah,
Oh,
Betty is here.
Betty, how do you vote?
Alan.
Alan, thank you. We have 4 votes for Alan and 3 votes for Larry. Alan Costello is appointed the chair.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate everyone's confidence in me. I hope to pick up where David left off and finish up the work we've started. At this time, we'll take nominations for the other
Yes, you can
positions.
sit there, please, and Alan, I'll go over there and.
Oh, I think we lost him.
Thank you, Michelle.
Here. And now I'll just sit here and record the votes that you take.
All right, again, thank you very much to the committee. I appreciate it. I'm honored to finish up the work that we've all done. And at this time, I'll take nominations for vice chair. Are there any nominations for vice chair?
It just says. I am.
That's what we're trying to.
Your microphone is unmuted.
So that might be the phone. That's just Martha's phone. Right, is it appropriate for the chair to make a nomination?
Sure.
I'd like to nominate Steve Bolleton for vice chairperson.
I'll second that.
That was Betty seconding that.
To accept it.
Are there any
I'll
other?
accept. I'll accept.
Okay, so Steve accepts. Are there any other nominations for vice chair this evening? Seeing none, there's none on, I can't see Martha any longer, but
We, s- here we are.
Is the meeting in progress?
It should be.
I can't hear anyone.
I can't either. I already just sent them a message.
Yep,
Can you hear us now?
Oh, there we go.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you,
Yep.
sorry.
so we are taking the vote for Steve Bolleton for vice chair. Betty, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Martha, how do you vote?
Is there any other nomination for vice chair? Sorry, I
There
haven't heard
There
my,
were no other nominations.
I vote for Steve.
Okay, Steve is your new vice chair.
thank you, by default. How I like it. So at this time, the vice chair has been, voted on and accepted. At this time, we're taking nominations for clerk of the Charter Review Committee. Are there any nominations for clerk?
I'll nominate
Mr.
Len.
Bolton? Levin is nominated. Are there any additional nominations for clerk this evening? Anyone on Zoom? You can hear us?
We can hear you.
Okay, hearing none then, at this time, Mr. Levin, would you accept the
I'll accept
nomination
the
for
nomination.
clerk?
Yep.
We'll close nomination and vote on clerk, and we'll do the, Michelle, if you wouldn't mind, just one last time,
Yes.
do the roll.
Alan,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Len,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
Martha,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
Len is your new clerk.
Thank you very much.
Very good, congratulations.
I hope to,
And that includes the reorganization, is that correct? We're in good shape?
Yes,
Okay, thank you very much.
so I'm gonna go back to my office and call up or you're gonna do your minutes and first.
Yeah, we'll go down the agenda and, we're disjointed tonight because Len's gonna have access to the screen, I guess.
And if I can, I'm sorry, but I have to leave now.
That's fine, Martha. Thank you very much for
Alright.
Zooming in and
Letting-
congratulations to your
You're welcome.
grandson.
Thank you.
Enjoy Florida.
Thank you.
Take care now. All right, so at this time, while we coordinate the Zoom between Michelle and Len, move down to agenda item 3, the minutes of May 14th. Did everyone receive the minutes and review them? All right, looks like a little of both. All right, at this time, are there any omissions, any corrections? Any motion to accept the minutes as they are written? Move to accept. Move to accept by Mr. Bolton, seconded by
Second,
Betty Tobacco. Thank you. Are there no further discussion on the minutes? We'll vote. At this time, we'll do the roll. Mr. Bolton for the minutes?
Yes.
Yes. Ms. Tobacco?
abstain.
Abstain, okay. Alan Costello, I'll vote yes. Mr. Hutchinson, I believe? Yes,
Yes.
okay. Mr. Levin,
Yes.
Mr. Paizel,
I'm going to abstain. I didn't. have a
Abstain,
chance
okay.
to read them. I'm sorry.
Ms. Boltrain has left us. And Mr. Hanlon and Mr. Lawler are not with us tonight. And just to touch on, I think Michelle covered it perfectly. There's been 2 spots that have vacated over the last week for different reasons. One very favorable, one, the other individual had some conflict and commitment. But we're, because of the work we did early in our history or in our tenure, as a committee, we have 2 alternates that stepped right in. So as she said, we can move on with our business. We're well-stocked with people, so. At this time, everyone is a voting member. And there's no longer any alternates. All right, any public comments? Are we on to public comment? Any public comment? Anyone on Zoom and or in the audience that would like to speak on anything we're gonna speak on tonight or anything regarding the Charter Review Committee? Not seeing anything, we'll move on to discussion items. We've already taken care of, at least on my agenda, that number 1 is taken care of. The Department of Communications and Community Engagement. I haven't talked to Steve in the last couple of days, but I did receive an email that was going to be, is that something he's working with you, Joe, on?
I have worked on it by myself pretty much,
Okay,
but I can share the concept. And next week, we're gonna meet next week.
we could talk about that, but if everyone would like to keep the same schedule, we can keep that going. We'll go on Tuesday nights and unless. Or is that the day after the holiday?
Yeah.
It is. You wanna lay off next week?
I'm
Yeah.
for other reasons not available next week.
I heard Ms. Cavaco say yes.
Cavaco?
I think we can address that. I mean, my guess would be that we're getting relatively close to where we no longer need to meet weekly.
Right,
We can probably go to bi-weekly.
yeah,
And even shortly after that, we may even be able to take some time off as a group, but then reconvene in force as we start our plan to present this to town meetings.
Since, if I could, since we're talking about that,
No, go right ahead.
what I would hope the chair would choose to do would be to create a subcommittee to deal with the renumbering of the charter and the production, we have all these pieces floating out there. Somehow we have to put this together into a charter, and I don't think that a large number of cooks would be a good idea, and perhaps 3 or maybe 4 would be a better idea. And if that were to be the case, we wouldn't have to have a meeting next week. We could have the subcommittee starting its work of putting the charter together. That's my.
No, I like the concept of something to be done offline. It wouldn't be a formal meeting for the 4 individuals on the subcommittee. Now, do you think we should expand on that? Should we break up the different,
I mean, I'm sorry, excuse me.
I'm sorry, go
So
ahead.
we have to remember that if we're gonna have a subcommittee, then we're gonna have to review everything that the subcommittee does. So why don't we just do it all as a group and not have to have a subcommittee? Isn't that what our charge is, really?
Well, that's certainly one way to do it. There's no problem. We can discuss it and we'll see what comes out as the best option, but, what were you hoping to do? Were you hoping to take the more, not controversial, I don't want to use that word, but the sections that are gonna probably require the most effort to get through to town meeting, those are the ones you're hoping to lump in, have a subcommittee address?
No, I think we have two tasks. We have one task of, Joe brought this up, at the very beginning. We think of the charter in a somewhat different way from the way the charter was thought of before. And we've talked about this in pieces of, this last meeting, we talked about the idea of taking all of the non-elected committees and putting them in one place. So that's the sort of work that we need to do. Then, once that's done and we're all happy with it, someone has to sit down with Kate and say, we need some motions. I mean, one motion, for example, could be all of the grammatical changes that we made. And we would list them, and any town meeting member who objects could say, let's divide it. But we could end up with, say, 5 or 7 or 8 motions with lots and lots and lots of pieces within each motion. But that's a second, that shouldn't really happen until we've created what we think the charter should look like. That's my theory. And Betty's completely correct that the group as a whole will have to review it, but it just seems to me it's more effective to have a committee come in with a plan, and then we can deal with something coherent rather than all of the pieces.
I'll take Len first, then Mr. Hutchinson. Go right ahead, Len.
So my thought about the way to do the numbering, because I think there's, from the standpoint of the structure of the charter, I think we do the numbering by creating the table of contents. Because the numbers underneath that are just gonna fall in.
Yep.
But that creates the organizational thing. So then we go and produce that. Then the other challenge we have is this gonna be structurally so much different than what we have on the books today? Trying to produce a red line version of that is, in my opinion, is gonna be next to impossible to show the differences. And so we have to come up with a way of doing that. Because, for example, forget about the title. Let's say, for example, section 4-3-1 now gets moved to section 8. How do you present that? So I think the point is, if we can figure out the structure using the table of contents, the other numbering effort is just clerical. It's not a structural thing. And then the next discussion is, and then I agree with you, then you take those changes and you group them into different things, because if you don't, you'll start talking about it and people's eyes will roll up in the back of their head, and then the process will be dead.
Well,
Just one second, Joe, do you have anything to add before Mr. Pizer?
I do.
Go right ahead, sir.
So, if you just take a look at chapter 2, I mean, a long time ago, I rewrote this for sense and passed out, pieces of it. And what happens is, when you look at the content, you see there are things that make sense. And the one that we talked about earlier that makes the most sense was the, role of town clerk. And so you bunch all the topics that have to do with town clerk into a section. You bunch all the topics that have to do with caucuses into the same section. And sometimes you run into discussions about the sense of those various items that are getting stuffed into the buckets that actually make sense. So going just with a table of contents would not be as easy as you might think. I think you actually have to go in and look. And I think you can do that for the entire charter, actually. That's just my concern. So.
Two quick things. I don't know if, Michelle, if you can hear us, but there was an email at 4:09 where Michelle says she's already started. I believe it's Michelle, maybe it was David and prior to leaving, the numbering. So I don't know how far ahead they've gotten, and I didn't want to perceived that, I didn't get involved until after the vote tonight, but someone's already talking about it. And then secondly, before you rebuttal, Betty, you had your hand up?
I did, and so I was gonna mention that Michelle has been tracking this all along. I believe that, I hate to do it to you, but you and or Steve are the ones that should be meeting with town council and getting the guidance of how we put this all together for our motions. And then I think we come back as a group after we've had our legal counsel and the chair and vice chair look at it and say, this is how we're gonna go. So if there's any changes within the motions that Kate and Alan and Steve have all put together, then we can address those all separately. But I think the document itself, I mean, we definitely need a table of contents. I believe the changes that we're making are already redlined. So I just think, I mean, if we're looking for efficiency, I think, you know, I think that's how we should go about it, because we don't want to be saying, okay, we're going to put it all together and this is the way it's going to be. And then we bring it to Kate and it's like, no, you can't do it like this. You have to do it this way. So that's just my opinion.
No, it's a great point. Steve and then Larry. You're gonna
Yeah,
add?
I'm
Okay,
gonna
yep.
address it. So I want to start with, I think Larry has the sequence right in that we first need to come up with how we want our charter to look. What is the document that, if, in our view, if everything is approved in the way we're suggesting, how it should still look. And I think the look is incredibly important. This goes to a repeated point that Mr. Hutchinson has made, which is, if people are going to look at this document, it should logically make sense, and you should be able to find things where they are together. Yes, when someone is looking to understand what is going on with the caucuses, they should find all the stuff together in the caucuses in one spot. I also, as I just looked and going back through, I noticed, ironically, we identify 3 bodies to start off with as being our legislative and our executive. And then after that, we then talk about elections of these bodies. Wouldn't it make sense to actually put the section about election of these bodies as the first thing and then follow along? And literally, as we look at it, that it almost gives us a guideline, because it starts with select board, planning board, town meeting, and then you talk about school committee and other elected and other elected positions. And some of them we have reference to in our charter, and some we don't. Like the redevelopment authority is an elected body here in town, but we don't talk about it in the charter. And that's fine, we don't have to. But to the extent that we are talking about some of these bodies in the charter, it would make sense logically to have them follow a reference to the fact that they're elected bodies. So I think all of that makes sense. We do have a new section 8 that Michelle created based upon what we talked about, chapter 8, which was the charter created committees. And then as I look through, I see all of the, for lack of a better term, statutorily created committees. And gee, we put charter created committees in a single chapter for a reason so that people could find them. Wouldn't it make sense to put statutorily created committees in a chapter for them? But that's the kind of thing that I do agree we should be talking through. And either we do so as a group as a whole, or to follow Mr. Piser's point, if we're trying to do this as a quick, efficient process where a few people get together, then maybe that's what we do, put it together as a group, as a recommendation. It's not a final, it's just a recommendation to the group, but just take some of that administrative moving around so we're not bouncing it back. And then also physically, it's just a lot easier to do. If something is done, then when people are on Zoom and they have a copy of it, they can follow it versus trying to do it as we move around. I think that's just, to Mr. Piser's point, I think a good idea, just from an efficiency standpoint. I appreciate Ms. Kavako's correct. We are all going to have to discuss it. but it might be better if we're discussing moving narrower pieces around with an idea rather than starting from scratch.
Just quickly, and then I'll historically, we've done it 2 or 3 times as a committee. We've broken off and done a few workshops and come in with a document that's pretty well accepted. There's some tweaks, but I think it's worked for us. So go right ahead, Larry, you can address some of the
No, I think the red line question is a worthy question, but I don't think it's as difficult as we think it is, because having been at the meetings for the past year, what we've done is we've gone section by section and dealt with those sections. So all we'll have to do in the redlining is reference the old charter and say, you know, if you want to see what's different from the old charter, the old charter was 237. This one is whatever, 4812. But that's how the redlining will make sense to anyone to, you know, I mean, the people, our big audience is town meeting members. They're the ones who are going to actually vote on these changes.
And you don't think, sorry, you don't think that would be confusing to people?
No.
To have to look.
I mean, you know, life's confusing, but no, not, how's this? Not impossibly confusing.
So what you're saying is, no matter how we do it, it's gonna be confusing.
Of course.
to minimize it. Mr. Bolton?
I think, Len, the point you're making is a valid one. If we were literally doing nothing more than throwing this red line version at town meeting and said, okay, figure it out. You're right. It would be exceptionally confusing from someone who wasn't there and seeing where we moved one thing to another. But again, part of it as well is we're going to be creating buckets of motions, many of which will be based upon the fact that we have now grouped things together and are then moving them to their own section. So honestly, explaining to somebody what we're doing, that in and of itself is the first statement we make, which is, okay, this is now a series of motions which combine all of the issues with respect to the COPC, including correcting the conflict we had in terms of two different dates for their organization and creating this new section of responsibilities. And that's how we explain it. At which point, where it was in the charter at one point is less relevant. And what's more important is the substance of what we've created. And I think that's how people will follow it.
Go right ahead.
So I want to jump ahead because we're talking about meetings. So do we end up, is the change to the charter one warrant on the town meeting, or is it multiple warrants?
Well, there's only one.
Article, you mean?
I'm sorry, article, say, is it?
I'm assuming that each group
When?
would be an article,
Each group of,
motions.
so how many do we think there's gonna be?
I'm guessing between half a dozen and no more than a dozen.
So when do we have to have those done?
Basically, if we're going to come to fall town meeting, really August 1st, because we have to appear before select board, FinCom. Getting on the warrants, not the hard part. Getting the formal motions together, that is the hard part, and then defending them before the select board and FinCom in particular, and COPC.
So I put a note in my calendar for that. The town warrant closes on August 9th.
Yeah, but as I
No, I'm
said,
just saying, that's the drop dead date.
right,
And the reason I changed subjects because the question is, that's a lot of work between now and August 9th.
and
So
we
we may not be able to forego not meeting every week because this renumbering thing is gonna be, while it may not be technically hard, it may be logistically, complicated because then we have to read it. We have to read it and make sure we didn't, make a mistake.
We have, unlike the Charter Commission, which had a death date, we don't. So if we get to August 1st and 5 of us think that we're not ready to go, so we do it in the spring.
Okay,
That was a quick question I had for myself, driving here. Do we have any, other, as a charter committee, do we have any other requirements? Do we have to have any public meetings? Do we have to have anything beyond the select?
well, we have
board?
been having public meetings.
What's that?
All of our meetings have been public.
No, I understand that, but like a finished product, the charter commission had to drop dead time to put a draft out and then they had to follow it up.
That-
We don't have those same, requirements. Okay, good, okay.
Alan,
Yes, Betty, I'm sorry, go right ahead, I don't have the.
can I make a suggestion? Because I know
Go
that
right ahead.
our goal was to have this fall town meeting. Maybe you can reach out to the town manager, select board, and just have a placeholder put, so, and I'm hoping we'll be ready for fall town meeting, but I think playing it safe, if we have a placeholder, we can, do our business right up until caucuses begin, or
No, that's a fantastic idea, and I've never done that before. What does the placeholder allow you to do? You'll get an article number assigned, but you don't. You can pull
Well,
it.
it'll,
What about the process?
well,
I'm
it'll
sorry,
just
Betty,
say.
could you explain it?
Yeah, I mean, it'll just, I mean, a placeholder is something that you know is coming, but you don't have all the finalities of it. So at least if we have a placeholder and the warrant closes, we can still move forward with all the information for fall town meeting, instead of saying, oh, we didn't make the deadline. Now we have to wait until spring town meeting, because I know that was a discussion we all had earlier, that we want this to go to fall town meeting.
That's been the
So,
goal.
but I think, like I said, just asking for a placeholder for the charter review committee changes or charter changes, however you want to put it. I know that the selectmen would be more than happy to do that for us, I'm sure.
Okay, great, good idea, thank you, Mr. Pizer?
Yeah, Betty's completely on with the fact that a placeholder is something we can do. That's not the full issue. The full issue is, are we gonna be ready to go to the select board and FinCom and COPC because their time, you start backing.
Oh, yeah, you
off.
start
Their
getting
time
on
is pretty quick.
heavy agendas and.
So, yeah, but, we don't want to fail because we have a logistical failure. If we're not going to make it, it's because we're not ready, but let's try to get ready. That's the point.
Just being devil's advocate, and I want to shoot for the fall and work hard for the fall.
Yeah.
Is there any benefit to piecemealing it so we don't confuse or inundate town meeting? Do a little bit in the fall,
No,
do a little in the spring, no benefit, okay?
well, there's a benefit, but I think that, we,
I don't want to overwhelm them.
I think we have a finished product that's coherent.
yeah, I think if you
Okay, Len,
did,
go right
I
ahead.
think if you did that, you're just opening up the conspiracy
worms.
theorist.
Yeah.
About what you're going to do.
Okay,
I think what we ought to do is, we ought to put together somewhat of a timeline, I won't call it a schedule, but a timeline between now and when we think we want to have the articles written. So that we say, okay, the next 2 minutes, we're gonna finish the renumbering and get the document in the format that's gonna be used to be presented. And then maybe the next 2 meetings, we're gonna work on these articles. Cause I think if we do, we will be much more focused on getting this done, cause I get nervous that it could end up, we spend 3 weeks doing, numbering. Cause we all have ideas about what we wanna do, and I think that might not be a bad idea to do that, to create somewhat of a timeline. If you look at a lot of the agendas today, they're putting in what's gonna happen in the next few meetings. I think that's great information. I think it would be helpful for us, so we can prepare for that.
makes perfect sense.
Okay.
Don't believe that.
The
ahead,
warrant
Betty.
closes August 9th.
According to what, I looked it up and that's what I put in my calendar, so unless I totally screwed up, that's what it is.
Okay.
So
Well,
we'll double check with
the town manager and town clerk and make sure that all that's clarified.
But if we don't, as long as we have a placeholder, I guess it doesn't really matter when the warrant closes, because then it'll just be up to us to get in front of the select board and FinCom.
Right, and that's pretty much I think a September circumstance, 'cause talking to people in the summer is always a challenge regardless, certainly for FinCom. FinCom takes a break before they really have to ramp up for the fall, and they do. And they do such ramping up that they deserve, and they need that rest, so. I think under the circumstances, I'd like to suggest that, given where we're at, I'd like to suggest that I agree with Mr. Pizer on a subcommittee on numbering. That if we take a break and do not have a meeting next week, being that it is the day after Memorial Day anyway, and we've already heard that some people are not going to be present. Then at that point, that subcommittee can still meet during that week at some point, create a draft of the numbering system. Even if it's not complete, it's still mostly done, and bring that, and that be our scheduled item for the following week. And honestly, to some degree, maybe we just have to make it a long meeting if we have to, but to do everything we can to bang that out. My belief is, I think once a subcommittee gets together and talks about this and comes up with the logical sequence that we think, I think most people, as a group, we've been very good about coming together on those things. And as I look through it, I think that there's always a few things that could be moved one way or another. But I don't think there's anything really significantly controversial. I think we can really come up with a really good numbering system, breaking a few things out that may be lumped together, and then lumping some things together that have been broken out, and come up with a really good sequential type of charter that makes it easier for people to just genuinely follow. And I think if that's our goal, and that is our goal, I think in doing that, a logical progression will lend itself to be shown. And I think we can do that. And I think by 2 weeks from now, we as a committee can be meeting together and really going through that.
No, I agree. Does it require, a vote? Does it require a volunteer? Do people want to volunteer for this, committee?
I'll act as the clerk, is my title, and do the,
Cause I think it is a good idea. We've had good luck in the past.
you don't wanna do
No.
it?
If Mr. Hutchinson, you do not want to be on the committee. Mr. Levin does. I'm obviously Mr. Pizer. I'm assuming you would like to be.
I would be, I'm gonna be away a couple of days, but I think some of this can be done
I mean,
electronically.
yeah, we can do it. I have access to a town Zoom account,
Beautiful.
so there's no limit. I can do it during the day.
Mr. Bulletin?
I can participate, yes.
Ms. Kavako, you have any interest in being in the subcommittee?
No, sir, thank you very much.
Okay. There's no one else on, right?
That's it.
I'd like to be involved, yes, but that brings us to 5 people. Is that 4? No, it's 4. Okay, that's 4. Well, we should reserve, Mr. Law, we should run it by Mr. Lawler or Mr. Hanlon, or should we, just pick 4 right now and get through the second meeting?
Yeah,
All right, so that'll be it. That'll be the subcommittee.
I apologize, but I have to go.
Oh, no problem. Okay, so
Apologize.
that's a great
Thanks.
suggestion. We're gonna act on it.
Okay, just be in touch with me.
I will.
Okay.
Just be careful.
See you.
Thank you, Mr. Pizer. Betty, I actually have one question, never having done this before. What is the procedure with, town council to formulate the, articles? What type of timeframe will town council need?
I think she's going to need it sooner than later, as soon as we're done with our renumbering. First, I think you should send her an email to tell her what we're doing. And that we'll be expecting, to meet with her. You guys will be expecting to meet with her to go through all the motions and everything.
All right,
So,
very good.
What I would suggest is that perhaps what we do is we have a preliminary meeting with her. Yourself, you and I.
Yep.
To just get her general thoughts, and then we come back to the committee to create
Right.
the final buckets that make
I know.
sense that the committee wants, as long with her guidance. So once we've had town council's guidance as to what we can do, we then express that to the committee, and the committee then creates the buckets that it feels are appropriate, consistent with town council's guidance.
Yeah,
Does that
perfect.
make sense?
Yeah. Sounds
So
like
that
a
makes
good
perfect
idea.
sense, because then she's in on the early stages and we don't go off on a tangent and have to change everything at the 11th hour.
Frankly, I can't think of anything that would,
You never know.
well, it's all the same content, pretty much.
I know.
How long did we talk about commas and English, you know?
Point well taken.
Oh, you missed a lot of the conversations.
I-
We can, no,
I-
I'm joking. We can go back and do those again if you would like.
No, thank you. I'm good.
All right, so I'll get that email out tomorrow, in conjunction with Mr. Bolton, and we'll bring her in as quickly as she has time to talk to us and
Yeah.
get her opinion and her
Because you gotta
guidance.
remember, she's gonna be going through all the articles for town
Right,
meeting. So the sooner we get our information, I mean, luckily, let's face facts. We have a municipal attorney as the vice chair. So I don't think it's gonna be that difficult to formulate what we're looking for. So, sorry.
no, I
Steve.
agree, I agree with Mr. Pye, Mr. Bolton, once we start talking about it and getting a flow, I think it'll go. I don't wanna say quickly, but relatively quickly.
Yeah.
So I'm good with that, and then, like you said, there'll be half a dozen, maybe 8, different articles or buckets, as we're calling them at this stage. And we'll get her advice how we should, compile those buckets. Some of them will be easy, I'm guessing the clerical ones will sort of tend to be easy, then there'll be some that, will become more difficult as we go up the scale.
Right.
All right, good, so, so we've all decided we're not gonna meet next week, we'll meet 2 weeks from this evening. And we'll
Yep.
discuss the work of the workshop, of the work, subcommittee, is that right?
The numbering committee, yeah.
You wanna go back to?
Oh, yeah, we started on this, I'm sorry, we got sidetracked, that's on me, Joe, sorry. So explain to us where this Department of Communication is.
Well, we report to, town manager. And I talked with the town manager. I mean, basically, he's, well, we, town meeting, voted for money to hire a communications and, community engagement manager. And, so that's the beginning of an effort that I think the town manager agrees, we would like to pursue with respect to, a communication strategy for the town and a way to implement that. So, for example, the town in, you know, without going into great depth, I mean, we need a communications plan. How are we gonna do this? Who are we gonna work with? What sort of, media we're gonna support? How we develop messaging? Likewise, one of the things that in my own motivation in all this is voter turnout. My belief is that the town needs communications and engagement planning in order to increase voting. I mean, you saw what happened this last election. I mean, this was not a proud turnout. So anything we can do, I think, and I think communications would be a significant step in the right direction. You know, thirdly, we're a world.
It's not mine.
Oh, I thought that was your computer, Steve, sorry.
We're a world-class town, and we need to reach across the nation and across the world. I mean, if you look at what Boston does with their advertising and tourist attraction work, I mean, they're all over the world. And you know, we have Plymouth, and they do a pretty good job with the resources that they have, but we need to be able to partner with them and help drive the messaging and help enhance our tourist industry. And that's another piece of this. Derek was especially concerned about media relations and crisis communications, and his point calls they get per week. And how to deal with them. So basically, in my experience, what he's asking for is a public relations person. I used to have a public relations person who seemed to have a phone implant. You know, she was on the horn to, all the connections and, you know, the biggies for the town are the, emergency management. The emergency management call. Likewise, though, you'd want to be on the horn to see Plymouth, you'd want to be on the horn to, any of the, Plymouth Independent, any of the outside, elements of the town that need to connect and need to know consistent messages about what the town, positions are and, you know, how we believe, we're supporting, whatever goals or solving whatever problems. Did you have a question?
I was trying to, let the people on Zoom know, hang on 1 minute till you finished your presentation. Go right ahead, keep going, I'm sorry.
Likewise, all of this promotes data-driven decisions and solutions in town. So we would be working, well, the communications folks would be working with Joe Young and the IT department. And Joe does internal training. You know, we would do, the communications department would be looking at outbound community education, those kinds of factors. So that's the job that this person would be hired initially to take a look at and start working on. And that person would, I think, well, that person would live in a communications and community engagement department. And that would allow for room for growth. I mean, this is a one job kind of ask right now. But as you know, if you take a look at you know, the way the world has changed over the past decade, over the past 2 decades, the most significant change has been the expansion of communications as an influence on the culture and tone and tenor of our society and culture. And you have to have the tools to be able to work in order to accommodate that class of problem. And this is the beginning, I think, of a department that could expand as appropriate to allow that. I have a description of the manager, and I have a description of the department. I can send it around and we can discuss it in detail. But I thought I would put it on the table.
If you would mind, yeah, if you could do that, catch me up to speed, I apologize, I'm just.
No, that's not your fault.
Yeah,
I mean, I didn't, I wanted to. Well, first of all, I want to talk to Derek. And then to make sure that lined up with his thinking. And and then, you know, I would, my thought was bring it to the table and have people talk about it.
Sure, let me, Betty, do you have anything on that topic?
Yes.
Okay,
I
go right
do,
ahead.
actually. First of all, when you say, Joe, when you say we, who is we?
Oh, I didn't mean, we was kind of a slip of the tongue, I think. I think the town, you know, I was speaking in terms of what the town might need. I think it's a need.
So,
The town, not me in particular, but, or
I-
we the committee.
I mean, I don't know if it's glaring to anyone else, but it certainly is glaring to me, is that we are hiring a communications director. The job is
Right.
posted, they're already taking applications.
Right.
We don't have any purview of saying what they can or cannot do. That will be coming out of the town manager's office. And if they need to hire someone else, they'll go through the same process. I don't think whoever that we is, has any authority or should dictate anything to the town manager about this position, because he is well aware. We've been fighting for a communications specialist for at least 3 years. Because when I was on the board, we wanted one way back then. But I I do not feel comfortable dictating and telling the town manager, you need, this is what they need this person, they need that. I mean, he knows what we need. And this communications director is gonna come in, and if it's gonna be department, he's gonna create his own team to do what we need to do. Everybody knows that communications are lacking, and that's the reason why that position was approved, but I mean, I think we're overstepping if we say this is what we need to do and this is what you should do, because we don't, it's not in our purview. That's up to the town manager. So, and it's up to this communications director, working with the town manager, and I'm sure with the Board of Selectmen, to see how it's gonna move forward. So I wouldn't agree with doing anything of this presentation. I'm sorry, Joe, not to be, you know, not to be a pain, or please don't take it as disrespect. But it just isn't in our purview. That's why we pay the town manager what we pay him.
Thank you, Betty. Mr. Bolton?
There is no question that town communications is something that we desperately need to work on. I think that's an absolute given. I think that that's why the town, despite certain town meeting members balking over the $90,000 for the communications director, why town meeting passed the request for such an appropriation. I think Ms. Kavako is also right, though, in trying to figure out how we put this in terms of being a charter item. What we've consistently stated is that the point of the charter is to assign responsibilities rather than dictate how things occur. And what I would suggest is that absolutely communication should be one of those directed responsibilities to the town manager. We should be making sure the town manager is responsible for town communications. At the same time, right now, under the currently worded 3-5-1 sub D, which we're still leaving in from our original charter language, town manager has the ability to establish, reorganize, consolidate, or abolish any department or position under the town manager's direction and supervision with the approval of the select board. So putting in a chartered position would actually run contrary to what we've said we want to keep in our charter. I would suggest that Mr. Hutchinson is correct, that we do need to do something to point out the importance of town communications and dictate that the town needs to have some measure of focus on that. And perhaps maybe the suggestion, Mr. Hutchinson, might be that you take your department concept, but rather identify the key elements of communication, and that we make those town manager responsibilities and let the town manager then decide under what departments, et cetera, he or she wishes to ultimately manage that communications effort. Because communications could ultimately be, as you very well point out, things have changed very dramatically. At some point, we may want to turn around and say, you know what? We actually want to have communications directors for different departments in town. They may want to have their own. You may need a DPW communications director for those very emergency services that we're talking about. And those emergency notices. And then we may want to have a separate communications director associated with our tourism industry, because these are also different skills. So rather than tell the town how it has to do things and bottleneck us where things very well may change, I would personally rather see the responsibility for communications and a good description of what types of communications the town should be encouraging as part of our charter.
And I'm gonna sort of piggyback on that as well. Thank you, Steve. I would suggest you take the meeting with, or the phone call or the email with the town manager and find out his needs, but it's, what you're asking, the question I had when you first started to describe this it's not consistent with what we've been doing for the last year. We'll let the town manager use that communication person as he sees fit, but in the charter, I don't feel it should show up there as a list of requirements that we put forth and hold him to. We just give him as another tool, let him use it. I think that's a summary of what Mr. Bolton said. He said it much better than I did, but I think you should go ahead, find out where the town manager thinks the communications should land and what his responsibility should be, but I'd be hesitant to put it in as a charter section at this time, because we've worked very hard to take quite a few of those out. I mean, we get DPW director, we have a different job department heads that we haven't put any requirements on, because we left it under his heading, his purview. So if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and do the work, and then we'll see how it lands.
Okay.
Find out what the town manager has to say about it. Anything more on that topic?
Just reiterating that we shouldn't be
I'm
telling
sorry,
the
Betty, go
town,
right ahead.
just reiterating that, I don't feel that this is anything that we should be doing in the charter, like you said, Alan, but I'll tell you something right now. If the town manager doesn't know what the expectations of this community is for communications, I'd eat every single piece of that charter. So, I know he knows, he's talked about it frequently. I mean, I just don't think it's our position to, as a charter committee, to dictate, and quite frankly, I mean, who we should be communicating with, if anybody, not the town manager, is the select board, because the town manager works for the select board. So I think that, if it's something about the positions and what we expect and all that, I think that's a conversation that could go from one of us to the select board, and then the select board could have that discussion with the town manager. I just don't see it in our purview, and I think it really oversteps our authority. And I don't want to look like we are doing that to the town manager or any department head or anything like that. I mean, we can certainly, tell our concerns to the select board or the town manager. I'd rather do it through the select board, and I have done a couple things through the select board, but it really is, he manages the town, and we have to allow him to manage that. And that communications director, like I said, it's been years in the making. So I don't think it's a surprise. We don't have to tell him, you got to go to the newspaper, you got to do this, you got to do that. I mean, if we're gonna really nitpick about communications, how do you know that the precincts don't want a communicator on their boards, on their town meeting boards? So I think we're getting too muddy in the waters.
Okay, no, I appreciate that, what you're saying, and I tend to agree with many of the speakers, so what was it looks like in this email that even the past chairman was actually letting you know that he was gonna pull it off the agenda. Did he feel the same way?
I don't think so, but I don't know.
It looked like he was gonna pull it off as an agenda item, that he was advised by town council and it wouldn't be under, but maybe I'm reading it incorrectly. I'll read it later. But okay, so.
No, I think you're right, Alan.
And I think we should leave it at that. If you wanna follow it up, maybe, is there any appetite to have the town manager in to speak to us regarding it?
I think allowing Mr. Hutchinson conversation.
I'll just leave it to Mr. Brindisi. That's fine.
Okay, very good. All right, at this time, is there anything further on the agenda here that we have? I know we jumped around a little bit.
Yeah, we talked about timelines. I think we're all set there.
Timeline we talked about, right? And the renumbering, we had that sort of covered. Any new or old business within the group, this evening?
Are we gonna
Anything
have
that-
any alternates? Are we just gonna roll with what we've got?
I apologize, I spoke over you, Betty. Could you just repeat that?
Are we appointing additional alternates or having the select board appoint, or are we just gonna roll with what we have, because we're pretty close to the end?
I thought about that briefly, but I think that that would trigger that, recommendation board again, wouldn't it? You'd have to get, you know, we've now lost Mr. Helm. He was part of that, right?
Yeah.
I think, my feeling is that we have a full complement of, members and that, I don't wanna say we're on the home stretch, but we are sort of on the back nine. I would suggest we go with the 9 we have. What are your
Okay.
thoughts?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Yep. Is
Okay.
that the
Yeah,
vision of the board?
I think so. I think the process would just, we would have to stop what we're doing until those people were appointed. And I think it would just, I don't think we have the time. I
Right.
think we have 9 weeks to get a lot done, and I think we just have to put our, chins to the table, however you say it, and go do it.
Yeah,
Pedal
I
them
would think. As
Thank
of
you.
right now, if things go the way we have them planned, I think we can handle the workload, and if for some reason we run into a jam and we drop or lose somebody unfortunately in the next couple of weeks, we'll make that decision as we go, but I think at this time we can go forward with the group we have. I'm very confident. We've worked well together. If we bring someone new in at this late time, you may, mess with the chemistry, and you may have to reinvent the wheel and go back to square one on some things. We hate to do that at this late time, so.
We definitely don't want to mess with the chemistry, right?
I thought it's been,
It's
a
been
great-
very
good group of people, which
Always
is good talk.
Yeah.
So at this time, if there's anything, nothing new or old business, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Is that?
Make a motion.
Second.
Mr. Levin makes a motion, Mr. Bolton seconds it. All in favor? Aye. Aye. See everyone in 2 weeks from tonight at 6 o'clock. We'll have the meeting right here.